Hello everyone, this is part 45 of What If Naruto Passed the Genin test, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Naruto collapsed into bed that night. He kicked out of his boots, threw his sword across the back of a chair, apologized to Ino for being such a terrible host, and fell straight into a very deep sleep on top of his comforter. Ino had watched him affectionately, trying to help him as he went, and gone about tidying up while he slept. There would be plenty of time for her to catch up on beauty rest later. She took a quick shower, cleaned up the bathroom after herself, washed her clothes, and hung them up to dry. She borrowed one of the robes hanging in the bathroom that she guessed Naruto would never use, and slipped it on. By the time she crawled into bed next to him, it was almost 3 in the morning, and Ino drifted off to sleep herself, curled up in Naruto's arms after he'd turned to her in his sleep. Naruto himself was resting peacefully in the confines of his mind. Taking full advantage of how minutes could be days inside Kyuubi's pen, Naruto dozed peacefully next to the giant fox, enjoying the ethereal warmth the massive animal gave off. To Naruto's spirit, the demonic chakra was more harmless than sunlight, but just as warm. More than 2 days passed in his mind before Naruto finally woke up and stretched. I was tired, mumbled the blonde, looking around and scratching his head as he got to his feet, really tired. Your body and mind were equally drained, said the demon. I think destroying those human villages took more out of you than you realized. So did your interactions with that pink-haired brat for that matter. Seeing her in such distress actually began draining the life out of you. I almost stepped in and told you to leave, your response was so pronounced. It did take a toll on me, Naruto mumbled, feeling the regret for his actions seeping back into his heart. Ino is right, I'm going to have to put that behind me, and hope that Sakura can forgive me, it's all I can do. But that's all in the past now. We can deal with those consequences when we come to them. But, you promised you would give me a brief history of Maibu the next time I came here. Naruto prodded. I did, Kyuubi nodded, straightening himself up. But even the condensed version isn't incredibly short, so listen carefully. Naruto settled in and prepared to listen, hoping the demon wasn't going to quiz him. 30,000 years ago, began the demon grandly, like a lecturing professor proud of his knowledge, my kind, 20 of us including myself, stumbled upon a method by which we could pass between our realm and yours. Without going into too much detail, we learned that if we constructed ourselves a physical form out of our infinite energy, we could no longer occupy our realm, hell, which exists in a purely spiritual state. The 20 of us, the most intelligent demons in hell, of which I was the 11th in power, appeared at random locations in this world which was occupied by tribal groups of nomadic human families. Again, not to inundate you with details, but the humans wandered around in relatively peaceful family groups, so when we arrived we quickly set about hunting them. They made wonderful sport, those humans, always so good at hiding. A few decades after we arrived and began hunting the humans, 5 of the nomadic tribes came together in an effort to find a way to fend us off. No one is quite sure how they did it and the secret's been lost for millennia, but somehow that group of 200 humans discovered chakra. They uncovered the method to combine physical and spiritual energy to create a potent power source they thought they could use to fight us. Naruto looked up at Kyuubi quizzically. Do you think they picked it up from you? He asked as the demon paused. That's my theory, human see, human do. But there are all kinds of theories among my kind. The long and short of it is that they learned, and they learned fast. These 5 families went into hiding together and began experimenting. Now remember, mortal life is in a constant state of decay. People and demons 10,000 years from now will be in a worse condition than they are today. It's just the way the universe on this plane works. Right, Naruto interrupted. Everything in a closed system breaks down, but what does? If you'd let me finish, barked Kyuubi. All this is to say that humans millennia ago were much stronger than humans today, and the same goes for demons. Akage's abilities today would be laughed at by one of the original humans who discovered chakra, but even so, those first 5 families knew that for all their sudden power they were no match for even one demon. So, as humans often do, they got creative. The families knew that demons had to come from somewhere and, by another furtive means that has been lost to history, they discovered how to summon demons from hell. What's more, they reasoned that since they could combine spiritual and physical energy to produce something as potent as chakra, maybe they could combine spiritual and physical beings to equal effect. Naruto's jaw dropped open. Yes, muttered Kyuubi, seeing Naruto's reaction. Now you're getting it. The families came together and began combining their physical essences with the spiritual essences of the summoned demons. The results were absolutely unprecedented. Out of nowhere, a race of superhumans emerged. It took us completely by surprise when the humans, who by now had formed one large family they called Maibu, which literally means ascended, attacked us head on. Granted, no one human was as powerful as a demon, but since we demons never worked together, we were solitary predators. The Maibans essentially had us outnumbered 200 to 1. They were ferocious fighters, and over the course of the next few decades, they drove the 11 most powerful demons back into hell by destroying their physical boss. The rest of us went into hiding. There's no shame in admitting it, but we were genuinely afraid of these demon-human hybrids, but at the same time we were fascinated by them. I especially was curious, and while my inferiors, the other 8 demons who came to be known as Biju, hid and cowered, I watched the humans. Naruto put up his hand to stop Kyuubi. So you're telling me, said the Uzumaki, that the Maibans, the old masters, were part demon. I'm part demon. Kyuubi nodded. They combined the very essence with demonic energy. They became something not quite human, but not quite demon. They remained predominantly human because humans have both physical and spiritual energy. The summoned demons had only spiritual energy, so the Maibans were technically 1 part demon and 2 parts human. This fascinated me. The Maibans used their newfound power to build a city and bring ordinary humans under their control. They became humanity's master. Within a century, the Maibans had bred enough, keeping their bloodline separate from regular humans, to build an empire. There were hundreds of them, and they rebuilt the world they'd nearly destroyed in their battle with the demons, allowing the ordinary humans to populate it and ruling over them like kings and queens. Now the Maiban Empire stood for thousands and thousands of years, but that's not to say they were the unquestioned rulers of the world. Sometimes demons would come from hell to challenge them. Sometimes an archdemon would come from the nether and kill a few Maibans before they finally drove him back into the void, but nonetheless, the Maibans had a challenge on their hands trying to hold this plane of existence when demons in hell were beginning to lust after it. The attacks from the nether and from hell were infrequent at first, but as time went on, the demons and archdemons began coming more and more frequently. The Maibans just didn't have the numbers to hold off all the infinite spawn of hell and the nether. Wait, Naruto interjected, much to Kyuubi's visible chagrin. What exactly is the nether? What are archdemons? Kit, Kyuubi growled. Never, the nether is just another realm of existence like hell or this plane. Demons are dominant in hell and archdemons rule in the nether. Archdemons are spiritual beings much like the Shinigami of this realm. Anyway, that was when they made their fatal mistake, continued the demon before Naruto could interrupt any more. The Maibans, in an effort to bolster their numbers, began interbreeding with lesser humans. They would take for themselves veritable harems to try and breed armies. It worked for a while. The first and second generations of the lesser humans were extremely powerful and did their jobs well and held the demons off. The empire continued to grow and flourish for thousands of years. Up until only 6,000 years ago, things were looking well for the empire. Their battles with the invaders would tear the realm apart, but they rebuilt it with their knowledge and wisdom as easily as they destroyed it with their raw power. But then things got bad. Demons began to work together to try and conquer the humans. Whereas they had been formidable enough as single entities, when the Maibans were faced with multiple enemies, things began to crumble. In an act of desperation, the Maiban priestly class summoned a colossal archdemon from the nether for help. The archdemon made a deal that he would erect impenetrable barriers around the whole world that would keep the planet safe from all but the demons who were already on Earth, the Biju, in exchange for the souls of every pure-blooded member of the priestly class. The deal was struck, but the empire was already doomed. You see, the 5 families who formed the Maibans became the 5 classes of the empire. There was the priestly class, the 2 warrior classes, the scholarly class and the princely class, and they were all there to check one another, to ensure that no one family could rise up and control all the others. The scholars were never really an issue, but two warrior classes held each other in line, and the priests and the princes were always working to keep the others honest. Without a strong priestly class to check the princes, opportunities arose that had never been there before, and the Uchiha, one of the warrior classes, saw their chance to rise to the top. Naruto suddenly remembered what Kyuubi had told him about the Uchiha and the Namikas being two sides of the warrior class. It made him wonder just what role the two families played in the empire's downfall. The Uchiha convinced the princely class, the Rinnegan, to seize ultimate power for themselves by wiping out the scholars and the other half of the warriors, the Namikas. The Rinnegan launched a surprise attack that spanned the continent and said all but a handful of the scholarly class. Simultaneously, the Uchiha struck out at the Namikas. The Namikas, however, were by far the strongest class and the most honest and virtuous. But their virtue was their undoing, and the Namikas stretched themselves too thin. They tried to save the scholars and fight off the Uchiha and fend off the Rinnegan. The Uchiha mostly won in the end. They hunted the overtaxed Namikas to the brink of extinction, and completely dominated the now battered Rinnegan, but the victory was hollow. The 9 Biju, including myself, saw our chance and we took it. We attacked the weakened empire from every front and decimated them all. By now the greatest champions had all killed each other in traitorous wars, and their blood was so diluted from interbreeding that they didn't stand a chance. We scattered them, and the Maiban Empire, which had stood for thousands and thousands of years, collapsed into utter ruin. Naruto gawped. He had never heard anything like all of this outside of the small snips and clues he'd picked up from Kyuubi. Wait, he said, standing up and pacing towards the demon. What about the last village of Maibu, the one that my sword came from? What happened to the Namikas who survived, and then the Uchiha and the Rinnegan? All this history just can't have been completely forgotten. Why didn't the Uchiha in Konoha ever talk about this, and why didn't the Namikas ever come forward with any of this? I told you, Kit, said Kyuubi. The empire completely collapsed into utter chaos. With the death of all the scholars and priests, Maiban history was cast into darkness. The only history besides what I know from my millennia of observation SD with the victims of the Uchiha rebellion. I doubt even your father's clan knew a tenth of what you've just learned. But it doesn't make sense, Naruto said. How does an empire just collapse like this? Even with the Uchiha rebellion it shouldn't have just happened like that. He snapped his fingers for emphasis. I'm giving you the condensed version, Kit. Keep in mind that there are centuries of history and volumes worth of political maneuverings and details and nuances that we don't have time to discuss. Once this war is over and we have a few hundred years to talk about it, I'll give you a much more detailed version, but you'd have to spend months of real time speaking with me in here for all of the details to come together. The blonde shook his head. All right, Naruto muttered. I don't like it, but I'll trust you on that. I do want to know the whole story though, eventually. Eventually, Kyuubi agreed. It's a story worth telling, but, as for the village of Maibu, it was the last gasp of the defeated empire. You see, a few of the surviving Namikas and the watered-down priestly class didn't want to revert to the nomadic lifestyle the rest of the world had fallen back into, so they settled down in what's now the Bird Country and built a village. They kept it secret and hidden, and kept some of the Maiban secrets, including the ability to seal lesser demons into weapons and armor, alive. That village lasted quite a while, even as the rest of the world degenerated and fell apart at the seams. The Uchiha became convinced the Namikas were altogether extinct and forgot about them. The Uchiha elders eventually SD in battle and memories and history SD with them. Maibu branched out about 2,000 years ago and founded another village in what's now the Whirlpool country. That village is actually still around, but it's more of a slum now. About 1,000 years ago 3 of the Biju, the 8, 7 and 5 tails, found the village of Maibu by accident and all at the same time. Horrible luck really was all. They wiped it out and scattered the survivors. The survivors of the priestly class reformed their own clan and became nomads again, eventually meeting and warring off and on with the Uchiha until the founding of Konoha. Wait, Naruto interrupted again. You said Madara was the last pure-blooded Uchiha. Well, he was one of the founders of Konoha and the first Hokage killed him in a battle at the Valley of the End. How in the world could someone as diluted, as you called him, beat a pure-blood from the warrior class? Regardless of what your history books tell you, Kyuubi said impatiently. Your first probably ambushed Madara and didn't give him a chance to fight back. He may have even been supplementing his power with summoned demons. That's really the only way he could have won. In a fair fight there would have been no contest. And what about the Namikas? Asked Naruto, his voice anxious and laced with curiosity. I'm getting there, Kyuubi snapped. So impatient, the Namikas had fallen quite some ways from their former valorous status, despite the fact that most of them, or what 7 or 8 individuals made up most of them, remained purebloods. Those that survived the destruction of Maibu became vengeful and bitter. Their sense of valor had degenerated into a lust for glory and honor. Their strongest members would constantly be going off to fight Biju or some other such nonsense and get themselves killed. They chose to fight for no reason rather than try to repopulate their ranks. They nailed their own coffin shut. Your father's parents were the first Namikas in centuries to have their heads clear. They saw that the clan was destined for destruction and they got out. They left and went with their infant son, your father, to Konoha. My grandparents, Naruto muttered. Yes, your grandparents, they were wise and thought like their ancestors did. The Namika's clan collapsed in on itself in much the way the Maiban Empire did. They began to fight amongst themselves and eventually wiped themselves out. When your grandparents SD of a strange illness in Konoha, it left your father as the last pure-blooded Namikas I know of. When he SD himself to seal me into you, the last visible trace of the Maiban Empire disappeared with him, aside from you. Naruto was silent for a moment. Kyuubi had finished his story and the Uzumaki needed a moment to let it all sink in. 30 millennia of history in all of 10 minutes, Naruto mumbled. Quite a story, but now I've got more questions than ever. Before that though, thank you Kyuubi. 4. Just for bringing me up to speed on everything. I know you don't have to do any of this and I appreciate it. But now, he said quickly before Kyuubi could launch into his usual dissertation of only helping Naruto because he had to for his own survival. Why don't we get to work teaching me a few of those ancient jutsus you've mentioned? SC. What time is it? Ino mumbled sleepily, feeling Naruto stir beside her and noticing the rays of sunshine coming down the stairs and pouring into Naruto's bedroom. Just after 10:40, said Naruto quietly. You've been sleeping like a rock. Ino grinned and opened her eyes. Naruto's big blue ones stared back at her. Don't you have to save the world or something in 20 minutes? She asked. You're going to be late if you're not careful. Naruto shook his head. I told you you've been sleeping like a rock, he said. I got up 2 hours ago and got everything ready to go, then came back. It only takes 5 minutes to run to the west gate. Ah, Ino noted, only then catching that he'd changed into a jet black Anbu suit. I'm glad you thought this out then. 20 minutes with Uzumaki Naruto, she mused playfully, only a little stung that she had so little time. Not quite enough time to make up for the lack of a honeymoon, she joked. Once this is all over, he said, stroking her shoulder through the cotton robe, I'll do things the right way. We'll put together a wedding and we can go wherever you want after some kind of. Ino pursed her lips and pressed a finger to his, cutting him off. Naruto, she said, we can skip the ceremony. She rubbed his calf through the rough material with her bare foot. All we need is each other and all I want is you. Once this is all over and things are the way they're supposed to be, I'll let you take me wherever, and whenever you want. She smiled seductively. Naruto's stomach jumped. He wasn't used to this, but thought he liked it. Not all girls want some kind of fairy tale wedding where they get to dress up in a huge white dress and walk down a flower-filled aisle, she continued. Those are the kind of girls who want a huge palace all to themselves. Not all girls want that kind of happily ever after. So what do you want if not a huge ring, a fluffy dress, and a storybook wedding? Asked Naruto, trying to maintain his composure. The tone suddenly permeating her voice was making his tea tight and his skin hot. Ino grinned and moved in close to him, brushing his cheek with hers as she whispered in his ear, determined to make the most of every second he was here with her. All I want is the knight in shining armor standing at the end of that aisle, but I'd prefer it if there were no aisle and no armor. Naruto smiled and slid his hands up to her cheeks to pull her into a gentle kiss. I think we could arrange that, he said. Ino gladly moved with him and was only all too happy to let him slide on top of her as the kiss gradually deepened and the world around her exploded into stars. This was something very near what she had been waiting for. I should hope so, she whispered back. Now, about making it up to you. She grinned again, ran her hands around through his hair, and pulled him in closer to her. A familiar and well-missed lightning surged over every part of her he touched. Seconds blurred into minutes which passed by unnoticed. All of her world blurred together, 5 senses undulating and flowing together all at once as every feeling mixed with every sound of breath and every taste mixed with the smell of his skin and the touch of his kiss. When he pushed her robe open, Ino gasped. His warm hands traced over her cool, bare shoulders, igniting a quivering surge that raced down into her chest, making her heart beat faster than she ever imagined possible. As Naruto's kiss lingered on the nape of her neck and began to trail downwards, the storm of lightning in her chest intensified and sank deeper into her, growing into a fire that spread out all through her as Naruto became more and more ardent. She could feel that he was growing more confident, and it only made her want him more. As Naruto shifted up again and kissed along her collar, he slid his hands beneath the small of her back and pulled her up against him. Ino made no complaint and braced her hands against his shoulders, giving her leverage to press her pelvis up against his stomach. Naruto groaned, feeling the warmth rolling off her like a bonfire. The rosy tint spreading through her porcelain skin made him hungry. She had just slid her hands under his Anbu shirt, pushing it up his torso till it had stopped at the base of his arms and begun trailing her fingers against his skin, when Naruto pulled back. His warm kiss lingered on the slope of her jaw for a moment before breaking off. Damn, she mentally sighed, opening her eyes and reading the hesitance on his face. He was torn between his to stay with her and doing what he knew had to be done. She glanced over at the clock. It was already 10 minutes after 11. Ino smiled for him and sat up as he got off the bed. She closed her robe, more to make it easier for him to go than wanting to hide herself from him, and sighed. She was trying to sound content, hoping he couldn't tell she was craving more. Go, she said warmly. I'll be waiting when you get back. Naruto nodded, whispering an, I love you, as he left and took the stairs 3 at a time to leave before he couldn't. Ino sighed again when she heard the rustling fabric of a small pack sliding over the muscled shoulders she'd been caressing not 10 seconds ago. The door shut as Naruto left and Ino dropped back onto one of the pillows. I should have moved things a little faster, Ino grumbled, staring at the ceiling in annoyance. We could have gotten at least a quickie in. She pursed her lips to pout. She knew Naruto would win the fight to come. Even 3 years ago he had been almost absurdly powerful and the ninja he was to travel with were almost as good as he. There weren't any doubts in her mind anymore, but that didn't alleviate the burning that had taken over her. Orochimaru, that bastard, Ino muttered, genuinely irritated that she was going to have to wait. She crossed her ankles and pressed her hands down against her stomach, then ran them down her thighs, squirming in hopes of a little alleviation. I hope Naruto kicks his sorry ass extra hard for King My High like that. SC. No one told Naruto he was late. Jiraiya, the sisters, and Shikamaru were all waiting silently at the western gate as business as almost usual was underway in Konoha all around them. Jiraiya had traded in his usual red robes for a deep brown cloak and hood to match the forest, while the sisters wore black Anbu suits like Naruto, their hair done up in tight buns to fit inside their hoods. We're ready whenever you are, Naruto, said Jiraiya. Naruto nodded and looked around at everyone, stopping at Shikamaru. You're going to hold things down here, right? He asked. Shikamaru nodded. He'd gotten rid of the bloody bandage covering his missing eye, replacing the cloth with a much sturdier patch. Don't worry about a thing, said the Anbu head. You've got nothing to worry about. Ino knows that she's supposed to do whatever you tell her to, that is if you actually trust her not to burn the village down. Shikamaru exhaled in a quiet hiss. Good to know, he sighed, masking his honesty and incredulity. I'll make sure to put her to wonderful use spying on our allies. His voice was ripe with a veil of sarcasm. Please do. Naruto turned to Jiraiya and the sisters as Shikamaru jogged back into the city. Shikamaru can handle things here. If the crane tries anything dirty he'll root him out. What's the plan, guys? He asked, mostly to the Sannin. Jiraiya cleared his tea. We're keeping it simple, but there's been a slight change of plan, he said. Sakura wants us to do some CSP-ling damage to Oto just in case Orochimaru's death doesn't discourage them enough. We're going to slip past Oto's net of spies, which shouldn't be hard now that Kabuto is and infiltrate the village from 5 separate points and converge on Orochimaru's palace. He held up a small scroll, tightly rolled up and handed it to Naruto. That's a copy of the layout of the complex our friend Toby was kind enough to get for us. Naruto managed to keep his gaze from narrowing. How did Toby get the schematic to Orochimaru's palace? He wondered. Shikamaru seemed more cooperative than even yesterday. Is that because Jiraiya told him about Toby's maps and he asked the same question? The sisters and I have our copies already marked out with how to get in, continued the Sannin. It should be 2 hours before nightfall if we time it right, and as soon as we're in the village we leave a trail of destruction and chaos behind us as we break for the palace. Once we're in we make a hard cut straight for Orochimaru's laboratory on the bottom level. We K him and the fourth, get out, and get back to Konoha by sunrise tomorrow. Sounds good, Naruto said resolutely, ignoring the anxiety beginning to claw his stomach. After we're outside that gate, said Jiraiya, it's total silence. We don't speak, we only move along our course. This is an unranked, off-the-record mission meaning we can't risk anyone outside of Konoha even thinking they might have overheard us discussing it. Clear. Naruto and the sisters nodded. Let's go, said Kurena. Instantly the 5 ninja took off like jaguars, sprinting in no discernible formation through the gate and out into the forest beyond Konoha. Their course ignored the road, cutting due northeast towards Oto. Quickly and silently, Naruto opened up the small scroll Jiraiya had given him, memorized the contents, and incinerated it in his palm with a blast of chakra. Hours passed. Kit, Kyuubi asked, seeping into Naruto's thoughts as they moved second by second and step by step towards Oto and Orochimaru. Kit, this is it. Are you ready? Naruto grimaced, feeling the amber sword tied securely across his back gave him a sense of comfort. As ready as I'll ever be, Kyuubi, he thought. But it feels kind of dreamy, doesn't it? Everything coming to a head so quickly with almost no warning. It's how war works, said the demon. It's by nature a chaotic thing, but it should all be over after this. You don't seem too worried about me driving into the jaws of someone as powerful as Orochimaru. You're almost calm about it, I think. This Jiraiya can handle the 4th Hokage with your help, and these 3 sisters are a sly force. We both saw how efficient they were in Kiri, and with as quickly as you've grown, I don't doubt that you can handle Orochimaru. It occurred to me that he's not really an immense threat by himself. Naruto nodded. He may be a Sannin, but he relies too heavily on his minions and his dirty tricks. Take away his demons and his agents, said Kyuubi, and he panics and begins his retreat. It speaks to his own personal weakness and cowardice more than anything. We shouldn't underestimate him, thought Naruto, grinning, but at the same time, we have the Kyuubi no Yoko for God's sake and the legendary Sannin Jiraiya. He has Sasuke and the 4th. Jiraiya and I will handle my father, the sisters will be more than a match for Sasuke, and you and I, 2-on-1 will take out Orochimaru. The sisters might even finish with Sasuke and help us. At worst this is a fair fight. He felt Kyuubi nod. More likely we have an insuperable edge. No one breathed a word for the remainder of the journey. As the team of ninja crossed a small river serving as a section of the Fire Country's border with the Rice Country, the group split off, everyone taking a different path to approach the village from 5 different angles. More hours passed. Naruto's track was the most straight, so he slowed his pace to allow the others to keep up on their own courses. His heart began to thump faster in his chest as realization gradually dawned on him that this was it. It was almost time for him to finally destroy Orochimaru. As he broke out of the forest, Naruto had to check his breathing to keep himself composed. Only a small, sunlit field full of rice separated him from the village of sound. The town was larger than he'd anticipated. It could have fit into a space half the size of Konoha, and the fact that it lacked a wall only made everything look that much more innocent. Sticking out of the center of the village, though, was the tall spire marking the central tower of Orochimaru's palace. It all seemed so surreal. There were no workers in the fields, and no one moving about in the village. It looked like a ghost town. This is it, Naruto hissed, summoning up a well of the demonic chakra. This is the end. Naruto's muscles surged with energy and he propelled himself up and through the air towards the village. From his vantage point some 50 feet in the air he saw just how cleanly the city was laid out, a perfect grid of rectangular buildings like barracks, too easy. The boy's eyes washed over with red and the whisker marks tore deeper into his cheeks as Naruto pointed one hand down at the village. He sailed over the building on the extreme edge of the village and fired. A bloody bolt of chakra sizzled from his hand and slammed into the roof of one building like a burning wrecking ball. The building instantly exploded and hurled flaming shrapnel into the surrounding structures. Naruto aimed again and demolished another trio of houses as he passed the apex of his jump and began descending. Screams filled the air as simultaneously 4 more buildings exploded into flame all over the village and alarm bells and sirens shrieked in the encroaching twilight. Naruto landed, drawing his sword and rushing towards the center of the village. All around him ninja in indistinct gray or green cloaks with masks, Orochimaru's pathetic copies no doubt, rushed from the buildings into the streets. From the other end of the village, Naruto heard Jiraiya's war cry. "This is the end," Naruto screamed, rushing forward and hacking one of the surprised ninja in 2 with a swipe of his hand. "Orochimaru, I'm coming for you. X." That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.